Hi, everyone. Glad you're with us back in the Cobb TV studio with our weekly chat with Chairman Mike Boyce. And good afternoon.
It's good to be back, Russ.
Well, as we last left folks last week, we left them with the cliffhanger that you were heading to New York to talk to the rating agencies. And what can you tell us about that trip?
Well, I'll just sort of give you the format for what goes on in New York. We visited three rating agencies, Fitch, S&P, and Moody's. And every one of them had at least two members of their company that would discuss various aspects of our financial condition, some of the things that we had taken in the past and some of the things we might be doing in the future. And they were really impressed with two things. First of all, the famous pie chart, because it broke down government function to something that's clearly understandable, identifiable, not just to the board, but to the public too, to see how we're applying resources against those functions. So that was all part of the budget process, and they were pleased to see that we had taken a much broader approach to the budget and allowing both the commissioners more time to review a $400 million budget, and also the public, how they have the opportunity to comment on it and shape how the budget's formed. The second thing they really liked was the 5-year plan that we're putting together. You know, in past, what we would do is we'd pass a budget, a biennial budget, but we weren't connecting all the dots. For example, when we have SPLOST projects, that's one source of funds, but as we saw in the Sewell Library, we had never budgeted the operations and maintenance for that library until the very end, which turns it into a crisis. So they're pleased to see that we were doing little things like that. How we put established firm policy on obligation of nonprofit money, and they were connecting them to services that the government should be doing. The 13 steps we were taking, management steps we were taking to make sure the government expenditures were being monitored very carefully so we don't have some of the same problems you're seeing around here in the Atlanta area. The SPLOST Oversight Committee, how we had revamped the policy there, appointed a single head in government to oversee that, but also to have the SPLOST Oversight Committee involved very early in the process on projects to make sure that the projects not only were in compliance with the law, but they were also on time and on budget, and then report as such back to the board. So all the little things we did over the year, I think went a long way to assuring the three members, the three companies that we were doing the right thing. Because management is a large part of the weighted factor in whether or not we are revalidating our AAA. They did have some concerns or questions about the TANs, these tax anticipatory notes, where we borrow to bridge the gap between collection of taxes and getting into over the summer we get into collecting the new taxes in the fall. And we were very clear about that one of the reasons for the larger borrowing this time is that we had used reserves instead of raising the millage rate to pay for programs. But I made it very clear to them that was a political approach, political philosophy, that it was very difficult for the board members to go and ask the voters to give us more millage, more money out of their property taxes, if we had not looked at all these other pools of money that were laying around, and so we drew down on those reserves. There's always a risk there involved that you might have some catastrophic event where you need to have these reserves, but they understood that we believe in a lean, physically conservative government, and I think that by our actions reflected that. We also made a mention of the fact that we had some known obligations that were coming into play this year, like the pay study. So we were very honest and open about all the factors to how we got where we are. And then they, of course, had a lot of interest about the Braves, about how well that was going. And the facts spoke for themselves there, that in every category, the Braves project had either met or exceeded expectations or projections, except for one, which is in the rental car category. But what we made up for in the other categories more than offset that small loss there.
In the rental car category, that's the smallest, really.
That's the smallest one, right. So, but I think the thing that really spoke best about the county, let's make no bones about it, was a 7.5% tax digest growth. Because that reflected that it's a county that's viable, economically viable, where businesses want to come here, and that we're properly taxing the properties that the state monitors on, and we're doing all the right things both for residential and commercial reasons here.
So we've had a AAA rating in Cobb for the past 2 decades plus, and how would you describe to the folks out there what that means for the county? I mean, it's 3 letters, but it means a lot, not only when it comes to us borrowing money, but also I think just economically in general.
Well, it does 2 things. First of all, look, I've said on many occasions here that we have to bring businesses to Cobb County. We have about 250,000 parcels in the county that are taxable, and out of those parcels, about 13,600 are businesses. Those businesses are fully taxed. They do not get the homestead exemption. So the more we can bring in those kind of businesses, that helps to keep our millage rate low. And one of the reasons business will come here is because they see that we have a AAA rating. And that AAA rating reflects many things. First of all, it reflects a government that's open and transparent, is honest, and does things with integrity. And I think that I can't say enough to business. When they come here, they get exactly what we say we're going to deliver in services. And we deliver it at the best prices in the metro area. On a practical basis, of course, it's when we make our borrowings, we have to pay a nominal interest rate for the TANs. And if our AAA, if we have a less than a AAA rating, we pay more for that interest. And that interest is paid for out of the general funds, which means I have less money to play with in the general fund. So given that we run a tight, lean, fiscally conservative government, every dollar counts. So it's not just a reflection on how well this county's run. Of course that's important. But it has really day-to-day implications that if we don't continue to do this, then we will pay a price down the road.
So you've been to New York, you've talked to these folks. We have to go out for the TANs, I think, next month.
Right.
So where do we go on the road after that?
Well, what happens is they have a committee that will review our TAN submission of $90 million. And I think it's important to emphasize this is not the highest amount we've ever borrowed. We borrowed about $120 million during the recession, obviously because the recession brought in less revenue for the county, but we still had to run county services, even with the layoffs and the furloughs and everything. The shortfall was significant. But once the TAN committee reviews our request for the $90 million, then they'll come back with a rating sometime in early April. And I don't want to predict the future, but I believe we answered every question. And I really believe this county still should be reaffirmed in that AAA rating.
Be in early May when they come back?
I'm sorry, yeah, it is April, yeah, early May. Yeah, I've lost track of time here, obviously, again.
Yeah, and we had talked about this before, but you've obviously planned a long series of town halls about the budget.
Right.
One of the reasons that got pushed back from your initial
right.
want of having those in the spring is because of this trip to New York.
That was one of the reasons. The other part is the budget process has a number of segments to it, and 4 of those segments are each one of the commissioners is assigned a functional area. And each month, each commissioner comes in with its functional area representatives, and they brief their proposed budget for 2019. So we're doing those reviews in January, February, March, and April. And so we'll finish out sometime in early May once we get there's some things that I have to do. And then in early June, we're going to have a meeting, another retreat. We're going to take all that input and we're going to shape the rough budget that I'm going to take on the road sometime in June, all right? So we'll have 7 town halls in June and early July before and during the time that we're doing the respective millage and budget hearings that are required by law. So as I tell people, there's 13 forums where the public voices can be heard. And I think that's a pretty good indicator this is truly open and transparent government where we care about the input of the people. And I can assure you that their voices will be heard and they'll influence what we decide to put together at the end of July. And on July 24th, the plan is we will come together at the night meeting and vote for both the millage rate and the budget and be done for this year.
All right, so a lot of steps between here And then, and again, as you mentioned, not just coming to one of these town halls, but emails are
absolutely
an appropriate way of communicating.
And again, I just cannot say enough. This board hears the people. So it's your government. Stay involved.
All right. And you can certainly check out all our social media sites. We'll have all those dates up for you, ways you can communicate with your commissioners, and how you can participate in the Cobb County government process as we go forward. In the meantime, see you next week.
I'll be back.
All right.
Thanks.